Okay, I'm ready now. So I'm gonna assume that most people have already played this, so I don't have to read through everything, and I'm not very good at narrating anyway. So this introduction, as I remember, Rosie did the first pass on it, and it was pretty different from this. Then I did my own version, and we merged the two versions, sort of, and then we went back over it to embellish it. So originally at this point, I had a thought where I wanted this crash to happen at night, so it would be a little scary, and I wanted Ford to just put like his hand on the window just so you'd see like the six-fingered handprint and you'd be like, oh my god, what is happening? Sort of like a scary movie intro, but then then other people said that would probably be a little, it wouldn't really be in tone with everything else, so I didn't do it. But here, this is what I kept at least. Something lands on your shoulder, a hand. So this is how you meet Ford. I still have the first draft that Rosie wrote of it, where it's a lot more traditional dating simmy, but I didn't think we needed to go with that in the end. I'll just use my name. I won't let you guys choose because I want to choose my name. It can be someone else for Stan. Oh, the pronouns option? Yeah. The thing is, when people asked about it initially, I didn't want to say like absolutely yes, because I still wasn't sure how much work that would be, and it turned out to be basically very little work at all. I was even thinking about like letting you input your own pronouns, like so I could store them in a variable and just remember where to use them. But I mean, we already basically avoided using pronouns very much in the game so that I wouldn't have to, you know, check for mistakes as much. So I decided against doing that and just did they, them. Was I ever tempted to put in a Princess Unattainable reference? Actually, no. I would imagine that that'd be in the D&D date, right? I wasn't in charge of that. Officially, I wasn't in charge of anything written for the Ford route. What I did do, though, was I went through and edited, and I wrote extra to string everything together between dates, and I added stuff in dates if I felt like there was a gap that needed to be filled because I had to cut content. Oh, this crack in the windshield that looks like an ominous triangle. So we did discuss at one point that maybe we wanted Bill to be behind this somehow, or at least hint that, oh, maybe Bill's still alive and still messing stuff up. And this is all that was left over from that. I think Rosie suggested like an overarching plot, either Rosie or Issa, and I was just thinking I've never come up with a plot in my entire life. And also that's a lot of work. Okay, so this segment, I'm like 99% sure I wrote this. I feel like this is the closest I've ever been to writing Stan correctly. Yeah, I love this line. Even though I wrote it, I still like it. So basically what they were talking about, what I like to think they were talking about, is something to do with like the government agents again. Like we don't want someone complaining about some sort of ultra strong magnet pulling their car in, because that would draw suspicion again. But you know, I never put anything in explicitly stating that. So this, I'm sure I can put something together from the gadgets I have lying around. That's me making up for the fact that Stan can't possibly have the tools to like uncrumple your car. I know that it's in cartoon logic, he could just fix it, but it's not like he has an auto shop here. He just knows how to give his car like a tune-up sometimes, you know? So this is my quick way to, because Ford calls Stan Stanley, I was like, okay, great. Like, what is Stan gonna say? Like, just call me Stan at some point? No, I'll just put in a little sentence that says, Stan goes by Stan. I also like this part. I know that I wrote it still, but I still like it. So at this point, I wasn't sure how to include Dipper. So I just had him like pass by and not know that there were like strangers in the house. You know, when you're not really sure if you accidentally committed a crime that you don't remember? That's what he's going through right now. So originally in this intro part, we went through, Issa brought up the fact that we hadn't included Seuss. And I was like, oh wait, that's a good point, because he's running the shack now. And I tried to write him into the intro along with Abuelita, and I just couldn't figure out how they made the living arrangement work post finale. Like, are they splitting the house now? Or are they just like, are the Pines just all guests in the home now? Like, you know, so I just decided not to address it, and that ended up being the way that it was. Yeah, this part is me not knowing how to be a guest in a stranger's home. This is what I'm guessing that you would do. So this section I wrote also, because we needed to tie everything together. It's funny that I had him mention that there's a town to tour, and never really gave you much of a chance to tour it. So he was going to say that all that pales in comparison to everything that you can find in the forest, and all the oddities of Gravity Falls. Okay, so Orion worked on the Ford's first date, and Fo helped them, and they wrote that Mabel should be chasing Waddles, who brings, you know, like the Mothman paper over. Because I had to string them together, I basically adjusted that to fit in seamlessly with the lead up. So I'm going to just get to know Ford. You can go through both of their first 2 dates with no consequences and then choose later, but if you know what you're going for, why not? So here he really doesn't want to take a stranger that he basically just met with him. When I wrote it, I thought it would be in character. I don't know, other people might think differently. What she's mouthing at him is basically like, go make a new friend. Yeah, so he just shoves you out the door and tells you to wait out there. I'm gonna respect his privacy because I know exactly what he's doing. He's going down into the basement. Okay, so this part is because Rosie said there's no way he can be hiding a butterfly net in his coat. I like arguing otherwise, but ended up adding this in just in case anyone else felt differently when they played it. So here's the excuse that we came up with for him to show you the journal pages, because you have no knowledge of the show Gravity Falls, and the journals are kind of important. So you look at scans of them. Wow, you drew these? Wow, you're such a great artist. Wow, I love those ink washes. And he's like, yeah, I got better, but thanks. So originally this was supposed to be a lead up to a minigame section where you meet different creatures that you saw in his scan journal pages, and you have to defeat them with an item or an action. You have a choice between 3 of them, and one of them is right, and you have to remember what you said about them. The thing is, after the drafts for the dates were collected and we had to polish them up, a lot of the information on each creature wasn't fully written, so I would have had to write it myself. And I was like, great, I don't know anything about them and I can't come up with anything because I'm not really a writer. So I had to just cut that. Like, the creatures mentioned, the campfire and stuff, that's all that's left over from the minigame. It wouldn't have been too hard to actually implement because it's really just, you know, it's like a lot of if-else's and stuff. It's just a series of choices. It's just that I didn't really have time to write all the background info that would have gone into it. Okay, some of these options I wrote some stuff for. This is one of them. Like the other was also one of them, but he brought a stun gun on the first team. Look, at least he left behind like his more serious triangle gun. So I think, yeah, these were, I think the gnomes would have shown up. I wanted the Gremlin to show up because I just thought it would be funny for him to have had such a terrible experience with it, with Fitterford, like, before. And then this time he'd be like, yeah, let's just do that all over again. Okay, this part I also written. Because, look, supposing that for some reason, this is the first time someone playing this has met Ford. Like, you know, maybe they haven't finished the whole series yet, or maybe they're just playing this game even though they don't know the source material. Who knows? I wanted to make him, I needed to give him his dungeons and more dungeons moment, like where he becomes likable for an obvious reason. Besides listening to Mabel and like kneeling down and being like, yeah, your concerns are valid. I wanted him to also think that this platypus was cute. I wanted him to also have big dork energy. Yes. So yeah, I did have to add, I want to say filter, but it's really just an overlay layer over the sprites to have daylight versions, sunset versions, which is this one, and a nighttime version. So they'd better fit in with the backgrounds. Was this done in RenP? Yes. Yes, it was. Platypus exists, Ford holding his hand out. You've never done anything wrong ever. I know this and I love you. Oh, actually, when this part went up on the Discord and I had people test run it, yeah, someone made that meme. Ford actually has a greater maximum approval point count than Stan does. I didn't ask the writers to regulate where they put their approval points. So some dates have a lot of choices and a lot of chances to earn points. Some dates don't. And I had to do some math to make that all work out percentage-wise and on the approval bar. And that's why sometimes the approval bar doesn't really look very accurate. Like if you're halfway through the game and you've done perfectly, it might not show 50%. It might be 40 or 60. I just don't remember anymore how I did it. These questions about his family, they were going to be while you were walking to Mothman. And it felt like too many questions in the beginning part, so I ended up moving them to this second section instead. So this section, I made some adjustments from the first draft, and it became like this. Definitely asking about like his family, that part I definitely edited. In this part, and I think I had to make edits to this whole part because I had to move it. So going with the whole ominous feeling, this is what was included to contribute to the ominous vibe that you would get from the triangle in the windshield. Then this, like, oh, something's watching me. And then it never went anywhere. Okay, I remember I wrote this. Easily a 3% success rate. I wanted him to acknowledge that it was kind of ridiculous, but he still did it anyway. Like, I don't want him to be... He's not super capable, okay? I mean, he's capable, but it's not like you're reassured. For this background, I cheated and I just added some multiply, overlay, glow layers over the daytime version to get this nighttime version. So this is the perfect message. You did perfectly. Or really, 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 really well. Actually, I was surprised that after the game was released, people were like, what's the difference between the two good messages? Like, was there a difference? And then I was like, oh no, like, was it not clear enough? Oh, whoops. So this part, this interlude where you go to the diner, this was added pretty late, and it's because, oh, I don't remember who brought it up, but the idea was that if you want Stand Forward to, if you want to have a better image in their eyes, you would get to know the kids, and the kids would have to really love you. This part's really to see how you interact with the kids. I keep forgetting that we put these interludes in because when I tested the game, so many times it was just, you know, date 1, date 2, date 3. I'm still not used to seeing this part. Oh, I generally love how much you interact with everyone that isn't our bachelors. It really helps round out the world. Yeah, actually, that's something I always love seeing in any game with a romance aspect, is how you interact with everyone else and how everyone else comments on your growing relationship or your existing relationship. And it's really a lot better than just having like you, the object of your affections, and like their interactions with you being it. So originally the trigger for this date was going to be that you pick up Dipper's Dungeon Master's journal that he's left laying around, and then Dipper's like, no, don't look, that's my journal for D&D. And that's why in an early version I was going to have a sort of point and click where you could navigate around the shack and click on things and like read the little flavor text for each one, and sometimes activate dates and stuff in between each of these events. And then it just didn't. First of all, the shack layout isn't formally set anywhere, and it's not consistent, and couldn't make that work. Second of all, too many art assets required. And then third of all, you'd have to write all that flavor text, and who would have to write it? That'd be me. So that wasn't gonna happen. So I rewrote the beginning of that date to be this. Self-constructed fantasy lore prison. It's probably the best 5 words I've ever written. The planning and alternate routes for this date alone, I went through it so times just to try and experience all the different options. Oh yeah, Phil and Orion put so much work into it. Like they had this whole flow chart, and I asked them to send it to me so it could help me do the whole code the whole thing. I guess it's close enough to program. Then later I had to consolidate it because one of them required an actual minigame, and I can't do that. So I had to cut that out, and then I reconnected the routes, and then I drew my own flowchart. Then I mapped out all like the approval points, and then I mapped out ideal paths, and there's one ideal path. Was Good Luck seducing that hot alpha sly reference to Ford playing an elf? Yes, it was! Knowing if you got the best options was tricky. Oh yeah, and I liked keeping it that way throughout the whole game even, because in other games you see if your choice is good or bad immediately after you make it, and then it sort of prompts you to reload your save or roll back, right? Until you get the best choice. I like having it just tallied at the end of each event. It does make it harder to eventually figure out the best route, but it's also a little more realistic. No save scumming allowed. Yeah, actually though, because in this one, in this state especially, you know if you got the right answer or not to the puzzles immediately afterwards. So I was tempted to put a block against rolling back, because here, you know, you can roll back in the dialogue within a certain limit. And I looked up online how to block rollback, and they were saying, well, it doesn't really matter if you put it in or not, because players are always going to find a way around it. So instead, I just saved 2 rollback blocks for wrong answers here, I think, just 2, because you actually get an extra CG image if you get something wrong. Okay, as I remember, I added Ford's lines here. Depending on what you say to Dipper, Ford says something different. I only got to go to a D&D meetup once and we only actually played the game for like 2 minutes. The rest of the 2 hours was spent rolling everyone's characters. Oh, that's relatable. I only went to one D&D meetup when I was in college, and we spent a lot of time just creating the character, and like I did play a little bit, and I ended up being like Dark Elf or half Dark Elf or something, and they were already in the middle of the campaign, so I entered in late. They also had like other games like sci-fi and stuff, but I just wanted classic D&D because at that time I was still playing Baldur's Gate, which is a classic D&D, even though it's 2nd edition and not like 5th like they were playing that day. And then the people in the group, I wasn't very comfortable with them, so I never went back. I would love to play D&D again at some point. It's just that I feel like I would have to be comfortable with the group. I actually, after the draft for this came in, I spent some time seeing if I could pull it together into some strange overarching story. I was not very successful, but the thing is that Miv the Meddling was going to reveal at the very end of all these puzzles that you were just in like a puzzle arena or stadium, and Tyros was actually evil the whole time, and like it's not Tyros, it's like his evil shadow twin, and the real Tyros has been kidnapped by Miv and held hostage, and the final battle is you have to fight your shadow selves, you know, that classic fight. And then I didn't do it. I would have had to write it, then I would have had to code out all the choices, and then I'd have to test it. Like, come on, that's too much work. Trying to set up an online group, but none of us actually know how to host a game. Oh, same. A friend of mine in college, she and her other friend offered to try out this. I bought this pen and paper D&D style game that was for Dragon Age because I really love Dragon Age. And they were like, hey, let's play it together sometime. And I was like, great. And then I was like, I don't know how to be a dungeon master. I've never done it before in my life. So it was kind of disastrous. Okay, so what was asked for in the draft was that we have a whole inventory and attributes thing. Originally I was just gonna cut that. I wasn't gonna do it at all. And then I was like, wait, I could just do a text box. So I did. Originally though, they did ask for, you know, each one to have its own flavor text. They even provided it. But I couldn't work out how to make it work well on short notice. So this is what I came up with instead. These stats literally do not matter, but they're there if you wanted to look at them for whatever reason. So I believe originally they did specify like, oh, like a D20 is for this check, D8 is for that check, and etc. And at some point I was going to actually let you like roll dice or roll a die and you know, have outcomes based on that, but that would just require too much writing. Like I would have had to write extra to supplement what was already in the draft, so I could do that, and I decided against that, just to keep things on a more direct track. See, the dice rolls just really boil down to Ford shows you what to do, and that's how it works. So this section is supposed to be completely in like background art for the scene. We didn't have enough time to do that, and I just had too much background art on my plate to also cover that, so I made it just fade back into the living room. Oh, and also I originally gave Dipper a different font, a more D&D-ish font, for when he was narrating and pretending to be any of the characters. Then there were like some bugs, and I had to work them out, and I was like, you know what, forget it. Oh, and I put this line in, but people took it a different way than I expected. Oh yeah, I think I had to put this whole end section in just to lead it out and into the next one. So he just gave you a whole set of dice. That's how you know it's real, when they give you a dice set. Oh, recently I saw these dice that were like space themed, and I was like, oh my god, I want them. But I paused just long enough to realize that the only reason I want them is because they remind me of Coder just a little bit. So I was like, no, I won't get them. There's literally no reason for it. I'm never going to play a D&D game. But then you can play the Star Wars role-playing game and then make your own Atten. Come on, like, who would I play with, though? Maybe when I make, like, 7 new friends. Oh, you know what? That's probably another reason why I liked Baldur's Gate so much. It's basically D&D, but, like, the other people in the campaign and the Dungeon Master are all already made for you. So you don't need to play with anyone else. It's D&D for just one lonely player. Snail, you DM that game in a heartbeat. Hey, if you get a group of people together, then please invite me. Aren't they coming out with a Baldur's Gate 3 or something? Yes! And then I watched the trailer. Well, I don't know if it's really called a full trailer, maybe it's just a little preview trailer. And I was like, okay, wait, you didn't tell me that that was gonna happen. And also, is it gonna be like all 3D now, like regular games? It's not gonna be that top-down view anymore? That'd be kind of weird. I also, out of curiosity, I looked up if the writer who did Zan's Romance in the first 2 games was still active, and they're no longer like directly active in the forums, but they're writing books actually. And I was like, man, good for her. Part of me was like, if Baldur's Gate 3 is like you're still playing the same character, I was gonna be like, man, I wish that she would come back and write another one. But after making like a game for free and stuff, the last thing I would want is for someone to ask me to come back and make more free content for them. So like, I'm not even gonna ask that even in my mind. You can be our guest star and I'll make an Atten stand in to flirt with you. Oh, thank you so much, Snail. So right there, if you chose Stan, then you would be able to go on his first and second dates if you wanted to. But because you chose Ford, Mabel is gonna interview you. And I wrote this section because I had to. Oh, a major decision in the beginning was, like, are they going to have paths? Or are you going to sort of have a general storyline in which you make choices that gain you approval, and at the end of the game, whoever you have more approval with is the one that confesses to you, or that you confess to? We ended up going for paths because it would be a lot easier, and because we didn't have like an overarching story. Like, the overarching story thing would fit better in a regular video game, like an RPG or something. So this baking date was originally the last one, the 5th one, and when I was editing it, I thought maybe it would work better if it were earlier, so that you don't ramp up and then back down for the last one. So like you keep a constant upward slope. And in this date, originally, because it's the last one, you're a lot closer, you get the option of a kiss at the end. So I had to cut that and had to make it a lot more like you're still getting to know each other. I'd love to watch him play the whole thing. Yeah, me too, but I don't think he would do that again. It was it was kind of nerve-wracking for him to choose Stan's path first, and then like Stan's first date is my writing. and like half the intro was my writing. So that was so whenever he was like, oh, there's too much car talk, I was like, oh no, that's me, because I needed no one to be able to ask, wait, this doesn't make sense because blank. Like, I had to think through it all myself already. This one was probably the CG that had the most expressions that I had to do. Well, okay, I didn't have to do them, but I was thinking this sequence could all be the same CG, so why not? I did not get the best score I could have, but that's fine. You can't win them all. What's also important to me is that you don't... Ideally for me, a dating sim doesn't ask you to completely sacrifice the choices that you would make yourself for the sake of appealing to whatever character you're going after. Like, really, the reward for a near perfect score at the end of the game is, yeah, that final pool CG, but also the kiss. And it's not, I mean, it's not too important to get it. It can always come later. Like, you know, it just means that there's a different timeline on things. Like, I wouldn't want players to compromise what they would say too much just for the sake of the game. Oh, okay, so for these shooting stars, I drew one shooting star and I made it go across the screen. What I ended up doing was that I had it already rotated in the image file, and I just kind of tested to see what coordinates I could tell it to go to, so it looks like it's going in a straight line. In the end, I don't think I got it absolutely perfect, but it's close enough that you're just kind of like, yeah, that looks about right. I mean, no one's gonna look at it too hard. I would want to go for the high five. As I remember, I didn't want to assign approval points for those choices because I didn't want it to matter how you expressed, like, what gesture you chose in that moment. Okay, so I wrote this part, just this small lead into the next state. Honestly, a pool is a strange spot for a date with a guy who wears a turtleneck so you don't see his tattoos, but it's what was voted on, so it's what Rosie wrote. On my own time, I did think about changing it from the pool to the pier instead. Because, I don't know, the pool just seemed like a strange venue. I remember that I felt like I should add this part in. I don't remember why, but I was talking with Issa, and I think we added something on Stan's route that was similar. Something like, oh, well, he'll be leaving again. I don't know where this is gonna go. So I felt like I should also make that on Ford's route so they're somewhat equal. These don't matter because I made you not say anything. And now we transition back into Rosie's writing. Obviously, I'm not going to be a coward. In this scenario, it's funny. I didn't choose to strip into a swimsuit, but he did. So, there we go. Ta-da! I can't believe I had to do the pool background twice. Like, once for the regular background, and then once for this one. Oh yeah, people were like, why isn't his tattoo on his neck, and why don't you comment on it? And I'm like, doesn't matter. You see him like this, and you're gonna ask him about his tattoo right now? Don't you want to take advantage of the moment? It's been a long time since I've read this for the first time, but when I read it for the first time, I thought it was really cute. Unfortunately, I had to read it for like hundreds of times after that for editing and for testing the game, so I'm basically immune to the whole game by now. I'd do more if the power of this game would let me. Look, that's for fan fiction, okay? That's for fan content. I mean, this part is definitely Issa, because I remember her writing this in. Yeah, this part was Issa too, because I remember. Okay, this last part, the parting conversations, I did the first pass on these because I wrote the options directly into the game code. Oh, there we go. So there were people asking about what the letter says. I wrote it in and I wanted to keep it open. You know, that's I know that's kind of what you say when you don't want to actually write it out yourself, but part of me did really want to keep it open and let you interpret that how you will. But Rosie wrote her own version, I believe, and then I wrote my version. But like, honestly, there is no actual real version for me. I just want you to imagine whatever you want there. So I would love to just shake his hand goodbye, but I feel obligated to choose this option. Yeah, and then it's like a little fake out because it's just a kiss on the cheek. And then he's like, no, let's try the other one. I am so ready versus save it for when I see you again. I don't know why I'm still laughing at this when I wrote it. I'll choose I'm so ready. And it's the reward for finishing the game on Ford's route. Trans-dimensional quandaries and theoretical solutions. I don't know why I chose that title, but I did. So now we can head to the gallery, and we got all of Ford's CGs. And the last one is deliberately misleading because I couldn't figure out a good crop for that. And Stan's is completely locked, but we're not gonna start his route today. Ford took almost exactly 3 hours. So Stan might be tomorrow, is what I'm thinking. So thanks everyone for coming and listening, and I'll end the stream now.